everyone, my name is Zach REDRUP, you're listening to the It's Not a Phase podcast, and on this episode I'm joined by Svalbard vocalist and guitarist Serena Cherry. We talk about the band's fourth album, The Weight of the Mask, writing lyrics for their most personal and inward-looking album yet, the band's growth during the lockdowns, signing to Nuclear Blast Records, her solo side project Noctule, her love for Skyrim, and loads more. Now, if you enjoyed this or any other episode of the podcast and you want to show your support, there's a few ways that you can do that. Number one, leave a rating and review wherever you're listening to this. It takes just a few seconds and it really does help. Number two, share this on your social media, whether that be Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, wherever. Or number three, if you want to go the extra mile, you can pay a little bit each month to join the Patreon, and in return you'll get access to episodes early along with some other perks, or you can pick up some merch from the store. All the links to that and the podcast socials where you can follow us can be found at itsnotaphase.co.uk. That's itsnotaphase.co.uk. And now with all that out of the way, let's jump right into this week's episode of It's Not a Phase. What's up everybody? Thank you for joining me on this episode of It's Not a Phase, where I'm joined by Serena Cherry of Svalbard. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me here, Zach.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to have you on. And as I was saying before, this is about the new Svalbard album, The Weight of the Mask, which is album number 4, which is crazy to think. How are you feeling?
Oh my God, it still doesn't feel real, to be honest. I can't believe we're on our 4th album. I mean, How fast is time going to go? It feels like yesterday we were on our first. And you know what's crazy is today, the 25th of September, was the anniversary of both One Day All This Will End. That came out, I think, 8 years ago. And then When I Die Will I Get Better, nearly forgot the album title there, came out 3 years ago. Actually, I think it was you that did the post.
It was me that did the post, yeah. Crazy, 25th of September is just a very important day for Svalbard, apparently.
Yes, yeah, big day for us.
So before we do dive into the new record, I just want to briefly talk about the last record, When I Die, Will I Get Better? Like you say, it's just hit the 3-year birthday milestone. So, the album performed really well for you guys, despite, a few, one very obvious thing was the lockdowns. You wrote and recorded it before all that happened, but it came out in the midst of all that. So obviously you were kind of constrained as to how you could promote that on a live front. And then obviously the label changes that happened at the same time, which is an extra, speed bump in terms of putting an album out. How do you kind of look back at that album cycle now? At the time, I imagine it was very stressful, kind of seeing how that was even going to pan out, if it was going to land at all with the fans, or even just, the scene as a whole.
That album release for When I Die Will I Get Better felt like a really precarious time for us. It felt like we didn't know what was going to happen. It was really weird releasing an album during lockdown where you can't tour the songs or do them live. It felt like we were sitting on them for so long, and it wasn't till nearly a year later that we managed to play those songs live, which is crazy, because that's such a huge part of it, is releasing an album and then taking those songs out there while they're fresh on the road. It was a very strange time, but then I think it also benefited us, because during lockdown people were consuming so much music. People had the time to really sit down with an album and get immersed in it, and I think we benefited from that, and the response that we got from the album was amazing. And then with Holy Roar, I mean, your label collapsing, what was it, a few days or before?
Really last minute.
It was very close to the album release date, but Church Road Records, they stepped it up big time. They are absolutely incredible label to work with. I can't speak highly enough of Sammy and Justine, who run the label, and they did an absolutely amazing job to get that album out. So all credit to them, really. Yeah.
I think, what you said there really resonates with a lot of bands that, took the risk of putting an album out during those lockdowns, because there were so many that sat on it because we didn't know when things were going to end. And like you say, people had time to actually sit and consume the music because there's nothing else to do. You're limited in your options. And people kind of gravitated more towards these albums because, like you say, people were sitting on some of their albums. So less music to begin with was coming out because it was just kind of all being held back.
Yeah, exactly. Like a lot of bands did choose to hold back their albums and wait till they could tour them. But I mean, again, it's such a precarious situation because none of us had a crystal ball. None of us knew how long we weren't going to be able to play shows for. So to hold it back almost, that seemed like a riskier decision to me because
Yeah.
what if you then end up holding it back for another year? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. Did you hold it back more than you initially would have done if the lockdown didn't happen, or did you release it when it was originally intended anyway?
It was released as intended. Yeah, it was always intended to be released 25th of September. So, we just stuck to the original plan, and I think it really worked for us.
Yeah, stuck to your guns. What was it like that first show going back then? Like finally playing these songs live and finally playing live at all after such a long time?
Oh my gosh. I mean, the first show we had back after release, after like lockdown and everything, was the main stage of Bloodstock Festival.
Oh, wow.
Probably one of the biggest stages I've ever played on.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I've been going to that festival since I was a teenager, so it was a really big deal for me to be able to play there. And it was just incredible. I remember that's probably the most nervous I've ever been.
Right.
For the Svalbard show because that's the longest we'd ever gone without like playing live together. So you do as much as you can rehearse in a room, you can never recreate that live experience. Like you can never prepare 100% for it. So I was super nervous, but it was amazing. It was like having a part of yourself given back to you. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah. It was just really, it was almost like waking up from a 1.5 year long sleep.
Yeah. Asleep at your desk, working from home, as the lockdowns. Yeah. So let's move on to the new album. And like your other albums, you produced this with Lewis. What's it kind of been like working with him? I guess over these years now, you've developed quite a strong working relationship. He knows how you all work, like how to work with you in terms of a vocalist and a lyricist as well, and, kind of delivering the best that you can.
I mean, it sounds almost cliche to say it, but I do really think that Lewis is like the fifth member of Svalbard.
Right.
Has a really deep understanding of our artistic direction and how we want things to sound and how the emotions that we want to convey in the music. I think like Lewis as a producer, he is like such a true artist. He cares so much. He's so invested in the albums that he makes. And he really, he has such a strong understanding of us as a band. And then in terms of like the dynamic working together, what's great is that we've known him for so many years and worked together on every single album. So it's really comfortable. It's a really nice creative atmosphere where you can just let loose. And then in terms of recording vocals, I used to really struggle recording because I used to blow my voice out. The first couple of albums, I had no voice left for about a week after that. But I've really worked on my technique. I've changed that a lot. And now I take quite a bit of pride in this. I am the fastest vocalist that Lewis has ever recorded on the last album. I basically put most of my lines in one take.
That's quite a turnaround.
Yeah, I come to swimming regularly and running regularly. They've made two things that have made huge differences to my lung capacity and my control in terms of like breath and vocals. So noticed big improvements there and really worked on my technique a lot. But in terms of like recording vocals with Lewis as well, because the lyrics are quite deep and intense, I usually always end up crying when recording the vocals. But Lewis, like, it feels comfortable to do that. I almost feel like he knows when it's coming and he's there with a cup of tea ready.
A box of tissues.
It's a good atmosphere. I think he really brings out the best of us in a record.
Yeah, well, especially you want that kind of comfortability when, as you say, you are writing about, these kind of dark experiences and, these difficult topics and stuff. So bringing them to the surface again and again, however many takes you take, and just even writing those lyrics, you've got to think about these emotions and experiences you've had, write them down on paper, make sure it actually works with the song and your melodies and stuff. And even after you've recorded, you're going to have to revisit them over and over again when you perform live. So that whole process must be just really difficult and kind of like a weight to bear sometimes.
It's an interesting one. I think sort of writing so many songs about the reality of living with depression, and kind of writing such like raw, honest lyrics about things that I'm really struggling with. in some ways, the songs can then act as a reminder of negative times and bad things that you've gone through, and performing them live night after night on tour can become quite painful. But then on the other hand, the process is also quite transformative, because you take something that you're struggling with and you kind of take it out of your brain and you put it into a guitar riff, or you put it into some lyrics, and you get to scream it out. And suddenly that's given the pain a purpose. And I think that can be a very positive thing. So it's kind of, it's a double-edged sword, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So what was the writing process first like? Because I think, did you not start like in the early stages of this album, like in 2020?
Yeah, we started writing this album pretty much straight after the third album came out in 2020. So some of these songs we've had for quite a few years. It was a really long, arduous writing process, to be completely honest with you. We absolutely labored over these songs. It was kind of felt a bit like putting music under a microscope and like analyzing everything. Does that riff need to be there? Does that drum beat complement this well enough? Like, we really put a lot of pressure on ourselves and thought about everything to kind of painstaking detail. But I think the result in the end has been worthwhile, and I'm really proud of like how it's turned out. But I'm also really relieved that now the songs are recorded, no one in Svalbard can turn to me and say, I'm going to rejig that middle bit in this song. That happened like every week.
Oh God. So you just go one practice to the other, and the song would not be the same as the last practice, basically.
They changed every single time. The songs changed every single time, and the songs changed right up until the week before we were in the studio. Bits were still getting changed, and it's like, just leave it. It's done.
Yeah, like it's kind of that saying, if it's not broken, don't fix it. But I mean, you've created a great album here, so whatever you've done has obviously worked really, really well. And you've also introduced violins on this album, which I think you did want to do with the last record, but for whatever reason, it didn't quite just fit into that album for whatever reason.
So having violin on a Svalbard song was something we've wanted for a very long time, ever since I heard Liam playing in the band Morrow, in which he's done some violin for them, and it sounds absolutely beautiful on their record. But I think we're all about serving the song in Svalbard, and we don't want to chuck violin on when it doesn't really fit the song. I think on the third album, When I Die Will I Get Better, there wasn't really a song where it felt like a natural fit to add a layer of violin. But with How to Swim Down, what was really interesting is that was meant to be an instrumental bonus track on the album. Yeah, it wasn't even meant to be a single or anything. It was just going to be some guitar melodies. And then when we started writing it, it was like, oh, actually, this feels like it could grow into something more. So Liam started layering the violin melodies on top, and then I came up with the vocal lines as well, and we just built it up from the sort of bare bones of an instrumental song to the Svalbard ballad that is now available.
Yeah, it's another string to your bow, you could say. Yeah, so I guess that kind of like the last song you finalized then, because I think as well, when you're writing, you do all the lyrics after literally all the instrumentation's finished, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wait till all of the music has been written, and then I'll come back and I'll sort of listen to all the music and fit the lyrics over the top. And how I write the lyrics is I've got like a notes app on my phone that's just full of sad notes from every day. I type little sad notes to myself, and I go through them and pick out the themes and pick out the kind of things that complement each other and fit together, and then fit those themes with the atmospheres of each song.
Right.
That's how it worked. But yeah, How to Swim Down was the last one. I actually wrote those lyrics when we were in the studio. So yeah,
I guess like if you're just writing these things down, I guess that helps you later down the line. You don't want to be like stuck in the studio or kind of like last minute, like I don't want to rush these lyrics, especially because of the, the kind of lyrics you write. There's no real ambiguity. Like it's very clear for the most part, like what you're writing about, what this song is about.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, that's a really important thing for me, is for our lyrics to be able to be understood by anyone. I want it to be that you listen, you read the Svalbard lyrics and you know exactly what that song is about, or exactly like how I feel about something. Because I think when you're really open and honest, it's much easier to strike up that kind of resonance with the listener and make it a bit more relatable, which is the goal of what I want to do with Svalbard. Is I would like, especially this album, The Weight of the Mask, to make anyone who is also suffering with depression to feel less alone by talking about the reality of it and acknowledging how tough it can get. But I also think, that makes it sound like this album is wallowing in the dark times. I think this album has a lot of fight in it as well. It's definitely about sort of fighting against the demons.
Yeah, well, I mean, it does sound like, and I'm sure you'd agree, like this is the most kind of inward looking and personal album from Svalbard so far. Like, even in just the name of the album, like The Weight of the Mask that you're wearing to hide these, these bad days that you have and these feelings that you experience. Is it because obviously in previous albums you spoke a bit more about kind of more wider issues, societal issues, political issues? Was it then kind of difficult to take kind of this more personal approach this time?
Do you know what's interesting is, like, I promised myself after When I Die Will I Get Better, which also cuts quite deep lyrically, that has like a mixture of sociological and sort of personal lyrics on it. Now, after we wrote that album, I promised myself I'm not going to cut so deep on the next one. I'm going to put a barrier up. I'm going to be a bit more vague, because wearing your heart on your sleeve in your lyrics, to the extent where someone can read your lyrics and it's like they've read your diary,
yeah,
makes you feel very vulnerable. It is definitely quite fragile for people to know, like, the dark reality of what your mind and your life is like. And it is quite, daunting to have that out in the open on display for anyone who chooses to read it. So I promised myself that I would put a bit of a barrier up and maybe not cut so deep on the fourth album. And then I completely went back on that. And if anything, I
deeper.
I like cut even deeper. And I think it was because at the time of writing the album, I was going through a really bad wave of depression. And I think when you are struggling that intensely, it's quite all consuming. And it was basically, it sounds really self-indulgent, but it was impossible for me to write about anything else. Like, I was so consumed by this darkness that I couldn't write a sociological song. I couldn't write a political song. It was just all about kind of releasing this inner turmoil.
Yeah, well, like you said before, I guess it's kind of, although it might be difficult sometimes, it's kind of a form of catharsis. You putting these words down on paper and expressing them. And I imagine sometimes you might be writing these lyrics and sometimes you have to take a step back saying, wait, am I going too deep here? Do I actually want to say this?
You should see the lyrics that don't make the cut.
It's very brave of you to do that, because, like you say, you perform these every day and these lyrics and songs will be out there for potentially the end of time. Like,
yeah, it's nice to think about that. Like,
yeah.
I really believe in the kind of how music can make you feel less alone. So if I can contribute to that in any small way, then that's a really important thing for me.
Yeah. So how do you feel about the way that Svalbard has kind of like progressed in terms of its status and kind of its reputation over the years? Like I said, your last album was probably most successful yet commercially. You've now kind of progressed onto this new album and you've signed to Nuclear Blast, one of the biggest metal record labels going. Like, how do you kind of feel when you look back on the band's career thus far?
It's absolutely crazy to look back on Svalbard's career, because it just feels like it's been this sort of mad whirlwind. And especially since the release of When I Die Will I Get Better, it's just felt like things have really suddenly blown up for us quite a lot, more than I could ever have dreamed of. And it's one of those things where I know it's like a really cheesy thing to say, but it is absolutely true. I wish I could go back and tell my 15-year-old self in the Slipknot hoodie getting bullied at school, hey, you're going to be signed to Nuclear Blast one day. It's absolutely incredible to think of everything that we've done so far, and the reception that it's had has really blown me away.
Yeah, I mean, imagine where you might be now if you, because I think didn't you start before you playing guitar, you learned to play drums?
Yeah.
Imagine where you could be if you did that. Have you carried on with that?
Oh my God. Well, I'd obviously be in a way bigger band because drummers are like gold dust. And yeah, if I had actually got good at drums, I'd probably be in like Cradle of Filth by now.
Yeah, well, who knows? So, as I say, you've signed to Nuclear Blast, one of the biggest metal labels out there. What's it been like working with them? Because obviously they're putting this new record out, and I think they also, obtained the catalogue that you had on Holy Roar. Obviously, that label dissolved. Yeah, what's it like been working with them?
Oh, it's been absolutely great working with Nuclear Blast. We've got such an encouraging and supportive team behind us. And yeah, even just little things like we got more time in the studio, which was fantastic. And they really, again, it's similarly to Lewis, they really understand our artistic direction with the band. They're not trying to force us to do anything that doesn't really fit with Svalbard, which is great. And yeah, it's just been a real pleasure working with them. And I can't wait. I tell you what, I cannot wait to hold that Svalbard record in my hand with the Nuclear Blast logo on it. I think that is going to be a real pinch me moment.
You're not getting copies yet?
No. To Brexit.
Oh, that little thing.
Yeah, because obviously Nuclear Blast are a German label.
Oh, yeah.
There's been a hold up at customs.
Oh God. Do you know when you might get your hands on it, or is it up in the air? Hopefully in 2023 at least, but who knows? Like, did you feel, obviously when you signed to Nuclear Blast, knowing that it's a big label, did you get kind of like intimidated by expectations and being on a roster like theirs, with some of the biggest metal bands going today?
I think there was definitely a big sense of imposter syndrome at first Nuclear Blast has been one of my favorite record labels for a very long time. A lot of my favorite bands are signed to Nuclear Blast. So to see our name nestled in amongst, the likes of Nightwish and stuff is just absolutely unreal to me. And I did kind of worry that I wouldn't be good enough. And I think that's where a lot of the kind of meticulous writing approach came from with this album that we're about to release, because we just really wanted to create something that we felt was worthy of being on that record label. We really wanted to live up to the high caliber of releases that they have and the amazing reputation they have as a label. So yeah, I definitely put a lot of pressure on myself being on Nuclear Blast, but I think the more time goes on and the more we see positive response to our singles, the more you kind of relax into it and go, okay, yeah, maybe I am good enough, Yeah,
absolutely. They wouldn't think you were good enough if they signed you, right? They wouldn't just sign oh, let's play a wild card here.
I know, but you know what it's like when you've got that voice in your mind that kind of is going to tell you that you're not good enough.
yeah I sympathize completely, but you powered through and you've got this album ready, and it's going to be out in a few more days now, which is crazy to think, right?
Oh my God, yeah, I'm so excited for people to hear it.
People might not know, but you've got another project called Noctule, which is your solo project that you started during the lockdowns, which is kind of like a Skyrim themed black metal project. What was the catalyst for you to bring black metal and Skyrim together into one project?
It was really simple. It was lockdown, so we weren't touring. I didn't have that much stuff going on in my life, as did most people. And I was replaying Skyrim, and I was writing a lot of black metal riffs. And then I kind of sat down and I thought, hang on a minute, I think these two things are bleeding into each other. And I think playing all this Skyrim is influencing me writing these black metal riffs. So I'm going to write a black metal album about Skyrim, because Skyrim is, it's Nordic inspired, isn't it? And the album's called Wretched Abyss, which is obviously about the Hermaeus Mora story. And that's all very Lovecraftian, which is again, another element that you often see in black metal. So I feel like it just wrote itself. It made sense. As soon as I made the decision to do it, the ideas were just coming so thick and fast. It was a really fun time making that record.
Well, I guess as well, what was it like writing the lyrics for that? I guess you had to refer to the game and kind of make your own words out of it. Did you pull any quotes from it as well?
Yeah, there's a few quotes from the game in there and a
Yeah.
couple of words from the games, like the shouts and stuff
Yeah.
are there in the lyrics. And it was a completely different lyric writing process to Svalbard. So it was, yeah, it was more like writing a love letter to a video game. It was very, very easy. Didn't have that kind of like churning inner turmoil feeling that sometimes writing Svalbard lyrics has. This was more just like getting to nerd out, but in like poetry form, really.
Yeah. And how did that kind of pick up from you just writing these few songs about Skyrim because you love black metal and you love Skyrim, to a full album, to a label putting it out, to it being on vinyl, to you touring and playing some of these songs as well?
So I think I posted on Instagram a little clip of like my Logic files, like, oh, I'm working on something. And Sammy from Church Road was like, oh, what are you writing? And I said, oh, it's black metal. And he was like, can we hear it? So I sent him like 3 of the tracks that I'd made, and Justine and Sammy were like, well, we'd love to release this if you're going to do a full album. So that was amazing. And then, yeah, the American label Translation Lost got involved as well and released it in the States. And both labels created some very beautiful vinyl variants that, yeah, are an absolute sight to behold. And then I did play 2 live shows, played our first show at Incineration Fest to a sold out Camden Underworld, which was crazy. And also played at the Church Roads Records anniversary gig. But to be completely honest with you, I'm not sure how much more live stuff I'll be doing with Noctule, because when I write the music, because it's just me, I tend to go overboard and I'll do like 6, 7 different guitar layers, different guitar leads and different parts. It's really hard to try and do that live. And because I only had 2 guitarists, it just didn't sound like the record at all. And I think it would be more liberating. I mean, I'm writing the second Noctule record now, and I think it's more liberating to view it as a project rather than a live band.
Yeah. Well, if it ever does pick up on a live front again, I think you need to go all out on the live setting, like the production. You need to get a dragon on the stage, and then you can shout it away, and just, I think that's the way you need to go.
Definitely. I mean, I did a little bit for the show at the Underworld. I had like this cloak, I had a red hand, and I had the Thieves Guild symbol like etched into a mask that I wore. And I came out to the Skyrim soundtrack and did sort of a bit of a performance arty bit, and then ran back out, wiped all the blood off my hand, came back on with my guitar and started the set. And so definitely tried a bit of the production value stuff. But yeah, I mean, dragons would be the next obvious step for sure.
Obviously. So you say you're writing the next one now. Are you sticking with Skyrim, or are you going to like Elder Ring? I don't know what you'd be doing.
I am writing an album about a different game.
Right.
I think it's really obvious what that game is if people follow me on Twitter. But yeah, keeping a bit of mystery to it at the moment. But yeah, next Noctule album isn't about Skyrim. It's about another RPG with dragons and swords.
So not Mario Kart then. It's not a Mario Kart album.
Definitely not.
You could write all about the blue shell. No matter how far you get ahead in life, there's always going to be a blue shell.
The blue shell is pretty black metal when you think about it, isn't
it? Exactly, yeah. So, we've been 12 years since Skyrim as well. When do you think the next main installment's going to come? Because I think Bethesda said they want the next Fallout game out first, but I don't know. What do you think?
Rumor has it that it's going to be 2026. So yeah, got a bit of a wait to go. Quite a few. They've just done Starfield, so that was consuming all of Bethesda's time, and then potentially Fallout before the next Elder Scrolls game. So, but yeah, all the sort of info and news that I've been reading is pointing towards 2026.
Yeah, I mean, it's already been 12 years, and it's already been put on nearly every single generation of consoles since it came out. So,
think of the pressure to follow up a game like Skyrim. Oh my God, it must be so daunting.
And it's got to be good enough to write another Noctule album too, right? So
exactly. I mean, I'm sure that's on Todd Howard's mind.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, what are your plans for 2023 and 2024 with both bands, Svalbard and Noctule? What's in the pipeline? I think you've got a few UK and European shows in October, is that right?
Yeah, so the week after the album's released, we've got a tour. We're starting in the Netherlands, then we're doing some dates in Germany, then France, and then we have 2 UK dates. One is Beyond the Redshift in London. We're in the Forum, and that's Cult of Luna's like day-long festival that they've created with a really awesome lineup. So really looking forward to that one. And then we have a show at Key Club in Leeds the day after on Saturday, the 21st of October, with loads of great bands, Without Love, Zetra, and Hidden Mothers. So really good lineup for that one as well. For the European dates, we're taking a Spanish band called Bones of Minerva out with us. And we just saw them at Arctangent and they were absolutely fantastic. So really looking forward to playing some shows with them. And then in terms of 2024, we're currently in the stages of getting everything confirmed and working stuff out, but we've got lots of exciting plans to come, and hopefully we'll be hitting some new countries that we've not played in before.
Oh, wow. That'll be cool.
Very exciting.
Bringing Svalbard worldwide. Well, thanks very much, Serena. I really appreciate your time. This new album is fantastic. I think it's the best Svalbard album yet. So anyone listening to this after it comes out, make sure you give it a listen. Get your pre-orders in if it's beforehand. And yeah, thanks again. Is there anything else you want to say? Any final words? Floor's yours.
I just want to say a big thank you to you for you've always supported Svalbard, and I really appreciate what you do with the podcast and sort of shining a light on more underground bands. So thank you. It's a privilege to be here on It's Not a Phase. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Serena. Yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening, and yeah, best of luck with the album launch.
Oh, thank you. See you soon.
No worries. Bye.
Bye.
And that is it. Thank you so much for listening. Again, if you enjoyed this or any other episode of the podcast, then please leave a rating and review wherever you're listening to this. If you want to support the podcast further, you can go and give it a follow on social media, pick up something from the merch store, or subscribe to the Patreon to get early access to episodes. All the links can be found at itsnotaphase.co.uk. That's itsnotaphase.co.uk. Thanks again. Hopefully catch you on the next one, and remember, it's not a phase, it's a lifestyle.